and now I'm in Tampa.
Heck yeah. All right, cool. Well, we're rolling, Kelly. Thanks for joining me. And thanks for like being here and being willing to share everything that you got going on. I mean, I know that we met before this. You're a speaker, you're an author, right?
Well, not an author, but creator
Okay.
of a
That's right.
yeah,
That's right. Okay.
prosperity
Okay,
planner.
and I knew that, but I was like, I don't know what you call it. Do you call it an author? I would say it's an author, right? You had to write the book.
It sort of is because it's more of a book than it is a planner. So you could
All right,
say,
cool. All right, cool. So you're an author. All right, Kelly, we'll own it. So, but why don't you start off by talking about the prosperity effect planner that you have and like everything that you got going on as far as like business wise and speaking wise.
absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Dalton. It's great to be here. So, yeah, I guess starting with the prosperity effect planner, right now I have a workbook version available on my website. And really, I created this planner, which I don't think the word planner does it justice, but I created this because I set out on a mission about 2 years ago to really make an impact and inspire as many working women as I possibly can to prosper in life, love, and work. Because I feel like women, we are the backbone of our jobs, our families, our communities. And a lot of times, more times than not, we tend to show up with our best self to work and we focus a lot on our career and maybe climbing the corporate ladder or getting to six figures or whatever that looks like for each person. But then other areas of our life get neglected. And so I have always had this motto since I was, 19, maybe even younger, but I think there was a pivotal moment for me at 19 when I realized I have to create my life the way I want it to be. It's not going to happen for me because of the type of upbringing I had. And I just remember getting to a point where I said, if I don't want this life that I'm from, it's going to be up to me to set the stage for my own life. And I did that. And I was really fortunate to just go after everything I want and get it. And there was this point in my 30s where by the time I was 30, I had a six-figure career. From the outside looking in, I had it all. I was every definition of success, right? But my relationships were suffering. I was in some really hurtful, toxic relationships and my finances were struggling. My weight was up and down, up and down. I've been all over the board. We'll leave those numbers out of the conversation.
Of
But
course.
there was a point when I realized something was missing. It was like this girl who created the stage of her own life stayed stuck in her own life in other areas. So in one sense, I did it with my career. I broke generational curses. I was the first generation college student and I had all this success. But then there was parts of me that were completely staying back where I was from. And
Hmm.
as I got into my late 30s, early 40s, I started to come across young women entering the workforce that were really looking up to me. And in their eyes, again, they're looking at me like, hey, she has it all figured out. She's crossed the bridge that I'm trying to cross. And I started helping them and mentoring them just like little sisters, really, just keeping them under my
Yeah.
wing. And next thing you know, I think to my amazement and to some of their amazement, they all just started hitting these goals and reaching these goals that they never thought possible. And they were like, Kelly, we need you. People like me, we need you. And so you need to do something to help more people. And so the prosperity effect was born. I decided I'm very structured. I like process. I like to-do lists. I'm an old-fashioned pencil, literally pencils. I mean, I have an
Oh
eraser
yeah.
and a pencil that I sharpen.
There you go. I got one of my mechanical ones ready.
When I'm on Zoom, sometimes people will catch me muting because I have to lean over and put it in the sharpener and I don't want to disturb the call. So, I
That's
just,
so awesome.
yeah, it really is. I don't know, like everywhere I go, I carry my pencils around. And I always have to have a few if I'm in person at a meeting in case they get dull. So
Right.
that back to the planner, one of the girls that I helped through quite a bit of things, and I'm talking all over the board here, from career decisions to buying a car to getting an apartment. Uh,
Oh yeah.
she went to Target one day and she bought a planner, and she called me and she said, I just bought this really awesome planner, but I can't wait till someday I go to Target and it's your planner I'm buying.
Oh, heck yeah.
And that's really where the concept started, and the path to creating this. So the planner itself is basically uh, not really a planner. It's a goal setting roadmap for anyone can use it, but it is geared toward professional women, because as someone who has had a really successful career in talent acquisition for 2 decades, but has had to learn the hard way to focus on being fulfilled across the board, I really wanted to help women that are like me, that can relate to me, right? So
Yeah.
what I did was kind of made it like a coach in your pocket. So as
Cool.
there's 5 different sections in the planner. You have career, spirituality, whether you're a Christian or you just like to meditate or believe in the law of attraction, I've got you covered. Finances, relationships, overall wellness and lifestyle, because what we eat, how we move our bodies, it's all important. It's all in there. And of course, it would not be a Kelly product if we did not put in a to-do list section. So that's in there for you. For those of you who are like me, it's okay if you want to use a pen or a marker. It doesn't have to be a pencil, but I got you covered with the to-do list. Uh,
Right on.
at the
Right on.
beginning of each section, I basically put in different worksheets or guides to really help you get clear on focusing on goals for that particular category of your life. Because I really think that when women prosper, everyone wins, right? Going back to us
Mhm.
being the backbone of our communities and our jobs. And a lot of times, I mean, Dalton, what's the first thing you usually think of when you hear the word prosperity?
Mm. Prosperity, freedom, or I feel like that's like my ideal. So
Yeah,
prosperity, like
freedom.
my ideal, or freedom. Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people will, I get two main answers usually: freedom or money, right? Finances and
Oh yeah.
having
Okay.
wealth. And those are the
Yeah.
two most common answers to that. And what I realize is that we don't truly prosper until we're fulfilled in every area. So it doesn't
Mm.
matter if you're making 6 figures, if you're making $1 million a year. If your relationships are suffering, or your weight is suffering, or your spiritual life is suffering, you're not really prospering. You're stuck.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right. Right. Right.
better to kind of, I don't know if balance is the right word, but I think it's better to have fulfillment in every area. And then that's when you really prosper. And people think I'm crazy sometimes. I'm in my
Yeah.
40s and I hope to live a really long, healthy life. But if God forbid something happens to me tomorrow, I have literally achieved a place in my life, in my existence, where I'm happy across the board. I have a very
Yeah.
simple life, but it's a happy life. And it's because I'm finally at a place in each category where I'm happy and I'm fulfilled. And so I called this the prosperity effect, because when you focus on each area and getting to that place of, contentment in each one, that's when you really achieve total prosperity. It's not about the 6 figures in the bank account necessarily. While that's
Hmm.
nice, part of it, it's not the whole equation. And so I worked in something called faster goals, and that is
Okay.
basically my version of SMART goals. So when you assign this faster goal formula to your goal setting process, you reach your goals faster because you start to execute and repeat. So very
Hmm.
similar to SMART goals work, you set very like specific goals that have a timeline that you can measure with certain actions,
Hmm.
but you do that and you start repeating the process. And that's how I've been able to see women that I mentor go from, okay, I just got a promotion at work. Oh, I just got my
Mhm.
first apartment. Oh, wait, now I just got my first modeling gig that I've been dreaming of for 10 years. Oh, now I just paid off all my credit card debt. And it's a domino effect because now they're just taking this process and they're just applying it over and over and over. And so
Yeah.
I put all these tools into this, quote unquote planner that really is a roadmap to help people set and reach goals faster than they ever thought possible in all of these main areas of their life, not just work, not just finances, across
Mhm.
the board.
Yeah. That's really cool. I really like that there's a lot of things that you talked about in there. A lot of it's unpacked, but I guess where I kind of want to start is, you mentioned a few things at the beginning where you're talking about like mentoring women specifically, and talking about. I think one of the things you said was like helping people be content with where they're at in the process by like focusing on these four different avenues. So I'm curious how you define, and you mentioned balance, right? But I'm curious how you define like balancing these four areas of life: spirituality, finance, what career, and your overall wellness. Like how do you go about really focusing on each one of those? Is it, there's four. So is it like 25%, 25%, or do you try to divvy out like 100% just at different times? Or how do you manage that process?
So, first, I think there's five, not four, but that's a
Okay.
great question.
Okay.
And now you have me double checking the tabs in
Well,
here,
no,
but
no, no.
yeah,
Okay. So you said the four and then the to-do list, right?
no, career, finances, relationships, spirituality, wellness, and then the to-do list.
Oh, wellness. Oh, okay. I messed up then. My bad. You're right. Okay.
That's okay.
I
No,
wrote it
that's
down.
the concept is there. I
Yeah.
knew where you're going with it. It's all good. So,
Cool, cool, cool.
yeah, so I think to answer this question, it's it's not really one set formula. It's really what
Mhm.
depends on that person, what their goals are. I come across some women, and again, I have actually worked with men as well. This isn't
Mhm.
solely for women. So if we have guys out there listening or watching us, this is for you as well. Um, it's really about where you are. So I have mentored people that are really happy in some areas of their life. Like maybe there's someone who graduated debt free, and hey, if that's you, congratulations, good for you. Unlike most of
Yeah.
America, especially my generation, will be paying student loans till we die.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it really depends on where you're at in your journey. Some people are really happily married or have a really healthy relationship that they feel good about, so they're not concerned about that. Like myself,
Mhm.
my career was never an issue. It was not even something that needed fixing because every time I wanted a promotion or a new job, I went after it, I got it, and all was good
Yeah.
in career land, right? But
Yeah.
so those goals are going to be different. But one thing that I would say is consistent that I recommend for everybody who applies this process to their life is
Yeah.
always start with one thing. So it's kind of like, let's take a goal that I think probably 90% of humanity can relate to: losing weight, right?
Okay.
We
All right.
we A lot of us can relate to that, and it's easy to just say, "I wanna lose weight." Well, how
Yeah.
much do you wanna lose? Because I can say, "Oh, I've gained weight, and maybe I gained 5 pounds," and my friends are looking at me like I'm crazy, but that 5 pounds feels like 30 to me. And then
Uh-huh.
someone else might have 80 pounds to lose or 50 pounds to lose. So now you say, "Okay, I wanna lose 50 pounds." Okay, well, how are you going to do that? Okay, well, healthy weight loss goals are 1 to 2 pounds a week, according to all the experts. So, how many weeks does it take you to lose 50 pounds at 1 pound a week, at 2 pounds a week, right? And now you're breaking it down. So now you're getting to a point where you're going to start by saying, okay, I ultimately want to lose 50 pounds, but I want to lose it at a rate of 2 pounds a week. So starting today, my goal is by this time next week, I should have lost 2 pounds. Okay, well, what do you need to do to
Yeah.
lose 2 pounds? Maybe you need to
Right.
exercise if you're not already doing that. Maybe you need to change the way you're eating. And so you start
Yeah.
small. And then what happens is as you start to pick up that momentum, you might take on more goals at once. And some
Yeah.
people can handle taking on, let's look at spiritual goals. If you're a Christian and you pray every single day, maybe you feel like your prayer life is suffering. And if you're someone who meditates and your goal is to meditate 3 times a day, but right now you're not doing any meditation, or maybe you're
Mhm.
only doing 1 time, or maybe it's
Yeah.
5 minutes a day when you would want it to be 15, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
And you're also someone who's like, hey, I want to lose weight and I'm looking for a job. You can do them simultaneously because you can start your day by meditating and take 5 minutes before you even brush your teeth to just get up out of bed, and whether you kneel or sit on the floor, however it is you do your thing.
Right.
And then during the day you're eating differently, and so you're working toward your wellness goals, and then maybe you're carving out an hour 3 times a week for job searching. So some of it just depends on what your goals are, how fast you need to achieve them,
Oh.
what how much time you're willing to put in, because none of this
Mhm.
works
Mhm.
if you're not willing to take action. And
Right.
I think that's the biggest difference with people that I have helped who have been successful, and people that I really can't help are the ones who actually want to do it. They know what they want.
Yeah.
They just need some accountability, someone to kind of hype them up and motivate them, but they're willing to
Yeah.
take steps if someone just helps them go along the steps. But the
Right.
people who are
Like,
making excuses, I can't help you. This takes work. Like, it's not going to just fall into your lap.
of course. Of course. And it's like, people who don't really, it really just comes back down to like the question of like how bad do you want it, right? Like how
Right.
much are you willing to give up for it? Because that's
Mhm.
another thing. I meet people all the time who have goals and then they don't realize what it actually takes to get there, and that's when they shy away or like chunk it out or something like that. But I'm curious on your thoughts. A lot of people that I interact with, and like I found myself doing at the beginning of like starting this journey, is you have so many things that you want to do, right? Like it feels like you have, and it might be a reality too, where you have like two or three or four like really important things that you got to get done. And so I'm curious with you as like a mentor and somebody who coaches people, how do you start prioritizing goals and what needs to go first? I mean, I realize there's nuances to that, but do you have like a way that you approach goal setting when it feels like there's a lot that needs to be done?
Yes, absolutely. Not always you have to break it down, right? Going back to
Hmm.
a weight loss thing, it's breaking it
Yeah.
down. But one thing that I do with people is there's a few different things I do. Some of them are actually worked into the planner. Uh, there's a questionnaire. It's like your passion and purpose or something, or I forget what it is, and it's slightly different
Yeah.
depending which section you're in. But at the beginning, I start off with a very generic one where I ask you questions about just life in general. And I tell you not to think too much, kind of like those personality tests that you take. They're like, don't overthink
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
answer the way it comes to your mind. And when you get done answering those questions, what do you love spending time on? Or what is a cause you're passionate about? And you get to the end, you kind of look back, you take a highlighter or you use your pen or pencil to circle the common themes, and you'll start to see, oh, okay, this is what's really important to me. This is what I need to focus on. Another
Okay.
Another way I love to do it, and I do this for myself from time to time, just as a gut checker, because sometimes priorities change for me. You take let's say you have 5 or 10 goals, the things that you want to accomplish, and you're like, how do I prioritize so I can start the domino effect? How do I start by breaking this down?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you do like a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 5 scale of where you are right now. Let's say 10 is I'm really satisfied in this area, it needs no work. 1, this area needs a lot of work, and then 5 is somewhere in the middle, on that scale. It can be a 7, a 4, doesn't matter. And you
Yeah.
rate each of those areas in your life, each of those goals as far as, hey, let's use the 5 tabs as an example: spirituality,
Yeah.
finances. How would you rate each category right now in terms of
Oh, okay.
how satisfied you are with that area of your life? And then
Oh, cool.
you prioritize it by the ones who got the smaller number, you need to focus on first. Because if you're ranking
Hmm.
yourself an 8 or a 10 in one area and a 2 or a 3 in another, then that's the area that needs help.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, I actually just did that for myself over the weekend. I got out pen and paper and pulled up that worksheet and did it again because it's been a while.
Mhm.
And I was like, what to focus on next? And you have a couple different projects that you work on
Yeah.
simultaneously. So
Right.
you know what it's like to have the competing priorities and to not know which way to go, and you'll be laying in bed and get an idea, and oh, this would be cool to do, and then it's like there's so many things and nothing gets done. So sometimes
Yeah.
I myself use my own tools with myself, believe it or not.
Mm. Well, that's what I feel like you gotta do. Like, I have a lot of things that well, and to be fair, like, I think when you have, like, a really good idea like this and you start to, like, monetize it, a lot of people don't realize and actually one of the points of my podcast was to start, like, to help people think, right, about how they can start, uh fulfilling whatever vision of success that they have, right? By doing the things that they already do. You know what I'm saying? So like I was really good at sales and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep going with that, right? And it sounds like with you it was really good with setting goals and prioritizing time and managing the process of everything, right? And so now we're just turning that into a book that we can start helping other people and helping people benefit.
Right.
So I just
Yeah.
think it's cool how that all kind of evolves from well, because I do the same things with myself. Like I have a sales guide, like a sales book that I wrote, and I read it all the time, like my own words, and I'll be like, "Oh, hey, I need to add this," or like, "Why did I wrote that down, but I totally forgot about it." Like that happens to me all the time. So I totally get it.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just action taking. And
Yeah.
it's kind of funny because I would say, what is it, 2021, about 8 years ago,
Mhm.
I was working at a company and I wanted a promotion. And my boss basically gave me an action list and said, okay, if you can accomplish these 3 things by this date,
Mm.
you'll get the promotion. I crushed those goals 60 days before they were due. And
Good for you.
thank you. And I remember putting together a presentation. He didn't ask me for one, but I put together a presentation for him of, probably some type of proposal or something. And there was some PowerPoint slides and whatnot. And it's really funny because as I started this journey, I found myself saying to people, I want women to know they have the power to set the stage for their own life and for their own
Mhm.
success. And all the work you do to come up with your elevator pitch and your mission statement and all these things, that just kept coming out. And I came across that presentation. And at the very end, on the last slide that I presented to my boss, I I actually had on the slide, people have the power to set the stage for their own success.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so it really must be my theme because and it just summarizes, what you were saying, that we all have these natural gifts and abilities, or some that we've learned and honed over time. But when you just lean into them, this type of stuff is born. And for me, I'm an action taker. I decide, once I make up my mind that I want something, nothing stops me. And it could be
Yeah.
something like, hey, my husband's not around and I have this 50-pound box that has to get brought upstairs. I'll figure out how to get it upstairs. Or it could be
Right.
that next promotion at the job, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that uh, the premise of it is you have to be willing to put in the work. Nobody is going to come and put it in
Yeah.
your lap. And, no matter what anyone tells you on Instagram, it's not really as easy as they make it look. You have to work behind the scenes. And all of us, Dalton and myself included, we probably
Yeah.
have a lot of blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes that go into the process to make these things come alive.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that is throughout my life I've kind of had that conversation with people as well, where you're chatting with them and you're explaining this principle of like there's going to be a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't see. And I don't think that people, I mean, I think it's cool like if you can let people behind the scenes and they can see this kind of stuff, but I also think there's something sacred, and I use that word intentionally, about
Mm,
doing all the work behind the scenes and no one knowing about it. Because that's
mhm,
where like that's where I learn about myself. That's where I realize like that's where I get all the motivation to go out and sell this, or I get all the motivation to really talk to somebody about this, is everything that happened behind the scenes that yeah, sure, if like somebody knows about it or somebody realizes it, like sure, but I think there's something cool about doing all that work and knowing that you did it, because in
I
my
love.
mind, yeah, like in my mind, sales is an awesome skill for me because it's super transferable. Like those times when you're in the background, you're doing all the work, you're grinding, like, and then you go get the promotion and it works. You're like, sweet. But the cool thing about that is not the promotion for me. It's like if I did it once, I can do it again, and if I did it here, I can do it there, and I don't have
Right.
to be trapped by like a bad boss or a bad situation. Like I know how to sell. Like I don't have to. You know what I mean?
I do. It's almost like a family recipe or your favorite restaurant
Yeah.
when they won't tell you what's in the sauce, right?
Right. Right.
Because but they love serving it and they love when people eat it. It makes them feel good. They
Yeah.
know how it got to that final product, but you don't need to know all that. You just need to know it was
Right.
made
Yeah,
with
yeah,
love.
yeah, yeah. Right, right. You don't, and well, because again, like it's different for everybody, right? Like, and what's cool about that is I always say, what sets you apart is like you, because back to like the restaurant or the food thing, it's like mom's cooking, right? The special, I could do the exact same thing as my mom or my grandma in making this recipe, but it doesn't taste the same. And
At
that
all.
special ingredient, it's cheesy, but it's love. They love what they do, and they set
Mhm.
this, and the love that goes into like the happiness that happens at the table that they foster. So you know what I mean? It's everything that goes into it besides the product, right? So like the promotion's cool, you know, but everything that went into it is better because that means that you can replicate it. And so it's really cool that when you put a planner together, when you have a coach like that who like yourself, Kelly, who can tell somebody like this is what you need to do. And not only can you do it for your career, you can do it for your relationships, you can do it for your finance, you can do it for well-being. Like one thing that makes you successful in your career makes you successful in your well-being. Have you found that to be the case?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
it's a, you know, everything does feed it. Think about I'll use this example again. I think all genders can relate to this, right? Think
Hmm.
about when you have to get dressed up to go somewhere. Maybe you're going to a wedding or a gala, but you have to get dressed up
Right.
outside of your Zoom clothes. You have to actually put on the suit and tie or the gown and the heels. And even though
Yeah.
at this point, I don't know if I could walk in heels after 2 years of not having to, but
Right.
when you get ready, you look in the mirror, and then you step outside to go to that event, you
Mhm.
carry yourself differently, right?
Yeah,
Versus
absolutely.
if you showed up at this, black tie event wearing a hoodie while you're comfortable in a hoodie and it's your day to day wear, I prefer to be in a hoodie any day over in a gown,
Of
over a
course. Yeah,
gown.
of course.
But when you do put on that gown or that suit and tie and you show up, you hold your head higher, you walk differently because
Yeah.
we just feel good because we're dressed up and we know, again, behind the scenes people are only seeing you showing up in the dress, but you know that maybe you had to shave first or you had to put on makeup or whatever it is you did to have that final look and to be polished and
Yeah.
dressed up for the night. And so the event itself would go on whether you're wearing your hoodie or not. You might look
Yeah,
like a fool
absolutely.
and feel, but you're gonna feel really embarrassed when you show up in that hoodie and everyone and you're like, "Oh, I didn't get the memo, like, I'm not dressed for the occasion," and you're gonna sit a little different, you're gonna feel like you wanna
Yeah.
hide because you're not gonna have confidence, but you show up and you're all dressed, you're walking differently, you're carrying yourself differently, right? And
Mhm,
so it's
mhm,
the same thing with this. You have, when you start your day off with a prayer or a positive affirmation or whatever, is
mhm,
your thing. And then maybe you take a half hour to go for a walk outside or do your favorite YouTube workout video or hit the gym, whatever physical fitness. I've never met anybody who doesn't feel better after a walk. It might have sucked getting them to do it. And oh, I
yeah,
really don't want to go to the gym today. But
yeah,
when they're done, they're like, "Thank God I went to the gym. It feels so good. I'm pumped. I'm ready to go for the day." And you
yeah,
just feel
yeah,
better.
absolutely. Yeah,
So when
absolutely.
it goes back to how I started with women being the backbone of everything. When life is good at home, you're going
Yeah,
to show up to work differently. And that's why a lot of
that's
times
yeah,
I work with businesses because when their employees, especially now with COVID making everybody just so aware of
mhm,
what they deserve, how they deserve to be treated. As a recruiter for a living, I've always taught people interviewing and working is a two-way street. You're exchanging service for pay, right?
mhm,
And people are finally starting to realize that it's not just about what's good for your boss, it's also what's good for you. But
yeah,
when your
yeah,
employees are happy at home and you've allowed them to focus on their relationships, maybe even done things at work, like have Kelly
yeah,
come to a lunch and learn and give everyone a workbook, and then they go home and start putting some of these things into practice, they're going to show up to work as their best self. They're going to be excited. They're going to get there and be motivated because they just left home or they left the gym or they said a really good prayer that morning, and they're just going to feel better and they're going to show up better and they're going to bring their
yeah,
best self. And
absolutely.
that can go in and out any order, right? When work is good, you'll go home and you'll be happy. When you have a crappy day at work, you go home and your spouse is going to pay for it because you're going to be in a bit, like
Yeah,
your spouse will be like, "Oh, you must have had a bad day. I can tell by the look on
yeah,
your face."
you're not in a good mood or whatever, right?
So they all
So
are
go
interchangeable.
ahead.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah. It really is though. That's really cool. So okay, there's a few things that I want to talk about because I just remember, as you were talking, I was like, "Oh, that's right. She's in like hiring." So I kind of want to talk to you about that space. But before we get there, um two things. So one of the things that you wanted to talk about and that I thought was really interesting was helping people reignite their passion, right? Or get back onto the I think you said get their or reignite their desire to like go after what they want, after what they're passionate
Mhm.
about. So I'm curious, and I mean, we've talked about a lot of that going forward. But what's the best way that you found people respond to when you're trying to reignite, their desire to go after what they want? Is there like one thing that just gets people going, or is it different for everybody, or what are your observations on that?
It's really different for everyone, and it's usually someone coming to me for asking
Mm,
for help. It's never
okay.
me just showing up in someone who I know well and saying, "Hey, I
Yeah.
noticed that you're struggling with this. Let me help you." It's more, unless it's someone really, really close in my inner circle and I can just
Right.
be
You can
like,
be
"Hey,
really blunt with them and be like,
yeah,
yeah.
you're not doing that anymore. We're gonna change that, right?" And
Yeah.
and I'm sure some of my friends will listen to this later and be like, "Yeah, she was talking about me there." Well, you know who you are. But
Right.
for the average population that may cross paths with me, it's usually them. I think, to take it back a little bit, I don't necessarily do this on purpose, but I have a way of sharing my own experiences once I realize where someone is, if they've opened up about a stage of life they're in or a goal they have.
Mhm.
There's always something for me to pull from in my own life that's relatable, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, of course,
uh,
of course. Yeah, of course.
then they'll start to see me as the expert because I've already passed through and got where they are trying to go.
Yeah.
What makes it something that I guess gets them going is now they see someone who's been there, done that, who can help them, where maybe they were feeling lost or stuck. Now they feel like there's someone to hold their hand and kind of
Yeah.
direct their path. And that's why I made the workbook. I can't literally hold every single person's hand, but I can kind of do it through this. And it's like I'm
Yeah.
there holding their hand, but I'm not. Because I do a lot of things in this workbook that I have put a lot of things into the workbook that I do with people that I mentor, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And so I
Excuse
don't
me.
know what, yeah, sure. What ignites people, it's just different because it's what makes each person tick. And I've even tried,
Mhm.
listen, for the entrepreneurs that might be listening, I'm sure we're all sick and tired of hearing the words niche down. I know I am.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
and
it just
with
gets, it's very smart and very practical. You niche down, then you grow out. But it's just like, oh, freak! If another guy
I,
tells me to freaking niche down,
if anyone else tells me to niche down, like they can't promise what's going to happen after that.
yeah,
But the truth is, with me, it has been so hard to niche it down because to your point, it's
Mm,
different for everybody. I have a Google Doc every time one of my younger female friends who looks up to me or former colleagues calls me or texts me and says, I need advice. I keep a
mhm.
log of their questions because I was sure that if I kept a log, there would be a recurring theme. Oh, 90% of the time they're coming to me to ask about their career because I'm a recruiter. It's a natural progression. No,
Yeah,
it has not. It has gone from I need to buy a car, but I've never been through the car buying experience. I don't want to be taken advantage of, or I'm tired of sharing a one bedroom apartment with my mom and want to get my first apartment. I need to get a promotion at work. I hate my job. How do I make the change? I mean, my
mhm,
in-laws
mhm.
are meddling in my business. How do I make them stop and how do I set boundaries? Oh, can
That's
you
awesome.
remind me why I shouldn't open the door for my ex's family? You know, I was in a toxic relationship, finally moved on, and now they're trying to connect with me on Facebook. I mean, like literally, you name it,
Yeah,
I get. And so forget niching down, like all your
yeah,
life problems, just call me. No, uh, honestly, and that's why I made this planner the way that I did because it's all like I cannot
yeah.
niche down further than these 5 categories. I
Right, right.
just can't do it.
Well, I think what's cool about that is like we may not be able to niche down on the situation that somebody's having, but there is a common theme of how to like get back on track, which I think
Yeah,
is really cool. Which is
good.
like, hey, look, it doesn't matter what you're going through. There is a common theme to get out of it or to get what you want, right? And I just think that's so cool. Like, you were talking earlier about you and the tenacity that you have, Kelly, to like if you see something and you want it to like go get it. And man, and then as you were talking about as we were talking about how to reignite somebody, that's it, isn't it? It's like somebody's got to want to come to me and be like, look, I'm sick of where this is at. I gotta get going to where I need to be. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. And it really it's like that faster goal process and then taking
Yeah.
getting clear on what you want, setting the goal, and then just taking the action and just taking those little steps and letting it be a domino effect so that okay, boom. What happens, what I do find ignites people, they accomplish the first goal, and then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, on to the next one. And then next thing you know, they're just doing it rapid fire because it's
Yeah.
almost like they caught a bug and it's contagious and now they're on a roll, right? And it just keeps going from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Are you still in the recruiting space now? Or are you full
I
time in this? Okay,
yeah,
you are.
I am. I'm a senior talent acquisition specialist. I had a recruiting function for a software
Oh,
company.
sweet. That's so great. I am like I have a full-time like sales gig, like 9 to 5 thing.
My
But I
name
think it's
is
really fun.
salespeople, so we might have to talk later.
All right, deal. Deal. But you're no stranger then I'm sure to what I'm like the conversation I kind of want to get your insight and opinion on of this, especially in sales, right? Like we're in this great, what do they call it? I think I heard the Wall Street Journal call it the resignation or something like that, right? Or like
The great
the re
resignation.
yeah, the resignation or like whatever, the migration or whatever they want to call it. But
Mhm.
I'm just curious for like what have you seen the reason for that being? Do you think it has a lot to do with like the pandemic and changing working conditions? Do you think it has a lot to do with like archaic company standards, or is it just like this weird perfect storm where like the pandemic happened and I just want to see what happens if I bounce because I went through the hardest year of my life and I noticed that I could make it and now I want to try something new to just test the waters.
So it's a little of all of the above. It's interesting because, like I said, I'm just 2 decades shy of being in recruiting and
Yeah.
primarily sales recruiting. I have built and implemented and led recruiting departments from the ground up, and I have
Oh,
actually been the
cool.
one to do the recruiting. And I've
Yeah.
done it. I've done everything, but primarily sales. That's my sweet spot. I think that's probably why we get along so well because it's a great personality match for me to talk to sales
Yeah.
candidates all day. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
what I have seen happen is, first of all, like very different than what I predicted when COVID
Mhm.
hit. It was completely different than what I thought. I did expect and anticipate a lot of people to lose their jobs, not necessarily leave their jobs, but
Mhm.
there's a mix. So first of all, along with the great resignation, you're hearing people talk very openly more than they ever did about mental health, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
because people, same stuff that I focus on here in the planner, right?
Mhm.
People have always just settled for the way that it is. So you were talking about archaic, systems and ways of working and leadership styles.
Yeah.
And think about it. I mean, sometimes I go down this deep hole in my brain and I'm like, who came up with Monday to Friday, 9 to 5? Who invented that? And why are we all just doing it and not asking
Yeah.
questions? Why is this
Yeah.
what we
Yeah.
do? And,
Yeah. That's fair though.
I started working remote in 2010. And so when COVID came, that was nothing new for me. But I realized for a
Right.
lot of the world, it was new. But what happened was this almost, to your last point, this perfect storm. You
Mhm.
have the way we always did it, it became acceptable. So even if your personal life suffered, they didn't care. They just care about you showing up and getting results for them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's managers who have no idea how to be managers and they're not really leaders, they're just barking orders. Whether you're in
Yeah.
blue collar
Yeah.
work, white collar work, doesn't matter. It's across the board,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
now enter COVID, people are in a position where they are able to stop and assess how they've been treated. And one thing we can thank the millennials for, they are very forward. They're very forward thinking, like, hey, I want to add value, but I also want to be treated good. And I want to do it on my terms. As long as I get results for you, it shouldn't matter when I get them, right? And so
Yeah.
you have that
Yeah.
thought process entering at full force in the workspace even before COVID. Now, COVID comes, and everybody, even the people who aren't millennials like myself, right? You have you have all of us starting to reevaluate how we're being treated. Wait, you want us to come back to the office, but for the past year and a half, we've proved that we're getting the work done and it's saving you money and it's saving us money. We don't have commuting costs and overhead and all of that stuff. And so you have
Right.
you have people
Yeah.
realizing that the way it's always
Yeah.
been done doesn't necessarily make sense and isn't really necessary. Things can get done
Anymore.
doing it a different way. And
Yeah.
so the great resignation is a result of people finally coming to their senses because COVID forced them to, right? And that's where this perfect
Yeah.
storm of, hey, I I do want to maybe try something different and maybe now is a good time to do it. But I also realized my self-worth and realized that my home life matters too and I want to have a balance and hey, what if I want to sign on at 10:30 instead of 9? As long as my work still gets done, who cares, right?
Well, and you know what? Yeah. And you know what I've noticed, like sales specifically, it really doesn't take 8 hours a day to do what we do.
Right.
I
Right.
just don't, because like
It,
it's not like I got 2 to 3 hours of prospecting. I got, 2 to 3 hours of meetings, maybe, but you really can't handle more than 2 or 3 or 4 demos a day. Like
right.
if you're doing, unless you're like door to door, but if you're doing like 5 or 6 demos a day, you're probably not doing your own prospecting. And then, but it's just, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, it's like, I know that we can do our work, like it's in sales, especially like unless you're in retail, I guess, then you got to be open whenever you got to be open. But if you're in like
And you can shout
B2B or
out
something
to
like
all
that,
the retail folks, by the way,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and
Shout out
all
to
the
retail.
Starbucks workers. Everyone's complaining that it's taking 45 minutes to get a latte, but they're not willing to go and work at Starbucks. I feel you. I get it. So shout out
Well,
to our
yeah.
frontline retail workers.
No, no, huge shout out. But it's
Yeah.
funny again. You look at these restaurants, and you're like, man, I wonder what's going on. And then I read a post, like I've known this. My parents grew up like they owned a restaurant when I was a kid. My parents have like always like been in that kind of restaurant industry, and like so I knew that waitresses and waiters, like they don't get minimum wage, right? It's like two bucks an hour or something like that in tips, or
And
like
then tip.
whatever's, yeah, yeah, tips. But like I saw somebody online go, I didn't even know they only made $2 an hour. And I was like,
Mhm.
and you're the dude who didn't freaking tip your waiter or your waitress. Like,
And
so it's
their
just
minimum wage is in the service industry is a lower minimum wage than the regular
right.
minimum wage.
Right.
People
It's
that
lower. So it's like, it's funny now. Now it's like, all right, these owners, whoever owns these franchises and these restaurants, really gonna have to start figuring out what's more important. Standing behind this $2 minimum wage or the $6 minimum wage, or paying somebody or redesigning the compensation plan to get to like obtain and retain workers, or employees who
and
want to be there. Because
people. Right, you
and
have to
yeah,
treat the people better. I mean, they
yeah,
will, at the top, they're
yeah,
making all of this money and then or they're raising prices because of this whole demand thing and inflation and whatever,
you're like,
but
okay, yeah,
the
okay,
employees' wages are staying the same. And it's
right,
really interesting because this is where my experience in talent acquisition and my planner that I've designed collide because I had a turning point in my 30s where I realized what I was talking about before that, hey, I worked so hard to make it in my career, but my relationships are still a mess. And there's this pattern that I have to break, this
yeah,
generational pattern that has to be broken. And the way that I did it really comes down to three key things. And now, as we're talking about this great resignation, I realize it's the same thing that's causing the great resignation is because people are looking at these three things. And you know what they are?
yeah, okay,
Values. Figuring
hmm,
out what your core values are. And I'm not talking about
hmm,
things you like to do, you like to play soccer on the weekends or go jet skiing. I'm talking about like
sure,
at your core, do you value integrity, your faith, your family? Like,
hmm,
what are your top 3 to 5 values? When
yeah,
people are in a job and they realize that job does not align with their values, they're second guessing it because COVID kind of gave us permission to do that. It was like the little like silver lining in COVID, right?
yeah, yeah,
Setting boundaries. In my personal life, I had to realize, hey, if this guy doesn't share the same values as me, it doesn't mean I think I'm better than him, but I have to set a boundary and say no to the second date because he doesn't share the same values. So it's never going to turn into anything. And it's
yeah,
what started
that's
with
fair.
get me to a place where I ended up meeting my husband, who's the most amazing man that I've ever met. Um, so boundaries at work. If you do
Yeah.
work a 9 to 5 and they say when they hire you, hey, this is Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I'm not saying you don't answer the occasional email at 10 o'clock on a Thursday night because you know something needs to be checked on. But when
Mhm.
you're off, that's your time. You know, like
Yeah.
when you're on, people they give you PTO for a reason. Take it, use it to recharge the battery. The weekends, that's your time. The evenings, spend it with your family so that when you go to work, you're showing up as your best self. Set those boundaries, right?
Yeah.
People are starting to set those boundaries. Hey, I'm not going to come to the office if I don't need to, right? So either
Yeah,
hire
absolutely.
someone else or let me work from home. And then lastly, and I know this is cliche, so I'm apologizing in advance. And I'm going to get a little Instagram on you, but gratitude.
Yeah,
I started using gratitude as a daily practice long before the days of Instagram. And I
for
think
sure.
it's like, it's the
Yeah.
most underutilized, underrated free gift we have that we can use every single day, no matter
Mhm.
who you are. Think about if you've ever passed a homeless person on the street and they're standing there asking for money and you roll down your window and give them 5 or 10 bucks, right?
Yeah.
They always say, "Thank you so much. God bless you." And it's
Yeah.
like you might have just gotten them a hot meal or something that they wouldn't have otherwise had, but they're sleeping in
Yeah.
the streets tonight. You're sleeping in your bed, but look at how grateful they are. And
Right.
that might be a very extreme example, but when you use gratitude, they say joy and pain can't exist in your head at the same exact moment, right? Like you can't have those two happening at the same time. So
Yeah.
even if you're upset about something or stressed about something that's causing you grief or causing you pain, as soon as you just stop and say, you know what are 3 things I'm grateful for right now in my life? And it could be as simple
Yeah.
as I have clean water to drink, I have breath in my lungs, or you know what, I was able to get all my kids off to school on time today and give them lunch. Like doesn't matter. Maybe you
Yeah.
made your cold calls for the day and did 2 demos instead of, oh, I wanted to do 3 demos, but you did 2. Be grateful, celebrate that. And when you
Yeah. Yeah.
gratitude, you shift your mindset. And so
Yep.
in every single moment that you're starting to feel stressed, just like recenter yourself and realize that you have things to be thankful for. I love to do
Yeah.
this. Someone else always has it worse. Like my job that maybe I complain about, or my house that I complain about isn't how I want it to be, and I say
Yeah.
that very generally, right?
Yeah.
There's someone out there wishing they had your home,
Yeah.
wishing they had your job, your $3 waitressing job with tips. There's someone who doesn't have any job right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they would do anything to have it. So gratitude, values, and boundaries. That's how I came up with this because it was the
Mhm.
formula I used in my life. And it's what's causing or leading to the great resignation, in my opinion, because people are now, without even knowing it, they're applying that formula. Hey, I got to be home with
Yeah.
my kids. I didn't have to be late to pick them up from daycare. I got to go to their soccer game. And, I was talking to a guy at work today during, my 9 to 5, and he was doing a demo for me. I'm a prospect for him. And his daughter came in. She had just gotten off the bus and she like came in, hi, daddy. And she's hugging him and sitting on his lap and she's waving to me on Zoom. And you know what? It's totally okay because we're living in this time where it's okay. And that guy
Yeah.
wouldn't have had that moment of his daughter running into his arms if he was at the office. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and people
Yeah. And
are
who had, yeah.
grateful for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because we're just in a different time now. It's like
Yeah.
I've the same thing happened to me. Like I was doing a podcast and my wife was out. She was doing something with her friends, and my son ran in here, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pause the podcast for a minute. But it's like, yeah, no one. I mean, we're just past the point of like having your kids hijack a Zoom call is like unprofessional. Like we're just way past that. It's just not even a thing
Right.
anymore. It's like, yep, yeah, do what you got to do, man. Like we're all living life, dude. So
Yeah,
it's
so
great
I
though.
think that's a really nice way to sum up both topics, the great resignation, which I know was weighing on you, and then,
Uh-huh.
the planner. It really comes down to establishing your values, then setting boundaries to protect them and adhere to
Yeah.
them, and having gratitude every day about everything from if you live in a cold climate, you can turn heat on in your house as long as your computer
Yeah.
doesn't break, of course.
You're right.
Well,
Amen.
there's people right now in the world sleeping outside or that don't have clean water to drink. So right there, if you have those two things, shelter and clean water and heat, like you're already doing better than, a lot of the world's population. So
Amen. Well, cool. Well, Kelly, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate you being here.
thank
Before we leave, though, um, where can everybody find you? Your website? Where can they buy the planner? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so kellysuite.com is my website. You can go to theprosperityeffect.co and it will bring you directly to the planner page if the planner is something you're interested in. But if you're interested in just getting in touch with me, following me, even having me come and speak or do a workshop, I can be reached at kelly@kellysuite.com. You can contact me via my website at kellysuite.com. LinkedIn, Mrs. Kelly Francis, I think it's under, or I
Cool.
have a Kelly Suite page there as well, and
Yeah.
Kelly Suite underscore LLC on Instagram. But if
All
you
right.
go to kellysuite.com, it's a good hub because then from there you can get to everything else
You
I
can get
just
to
said.
everything from there. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.